Not the Footy show.
It's I've been so disciplined about my attitude to all of this as the season unfolded. Not to, dwell on grand finals because there's so many bridges you got to cross before you get there. So I've just been ticking them all off and not thinking of the week ahead. So I came here tonight knowing that, we'd lost 3 prelims in a row, 2 of them with me as coach, and we've, fallen at the last moment. So the last thing I want to think about was what next week might hold for us. So probably in the last 10 minutes when Campbell Graham started to miss a couple of tackles, I'd probably start to think about the grand final and what it meant. But up until then, it was further sick on my mind because I just had to convince these guys that we had to win here tonight because there was just no option but to win.
Be the ball.
G'day everyone, welcome to episode 247 of Not the Footy Show. The prelim finals, they've been run and won. I have a very, 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 very happy co-host alongside me, although you can't see his face because, hey, he doesn't want to have you seeing those faces. It's Mr. Robb Cox. How you doing, mate?
Look away, I'm hideous.
Good, buddy. Good. Very happy that I was completely wrong on the second game of the preliminaries, mate. Completely
Melbourne
wrong.
I'm Warrick Nicolson, but Melbourne, they got the deer in the headlights. Today, Penrith 10, Melbourne 6. Last night, South Sydney 36-16 over Manly. We're going to start with Penrith's win, which I'm going to go and say a great final. Maybe not a great pure game of rugby league as such, but a great final. It was gripping, it was engrossing, it was great defense, but it was 2 teams that just didn't take their opportunities in attack, and no more than Melbourne in the last 20 when Penrith served up, I reckon, at least 3 to 4 really good sets in terms of field position. And Melbourne just, the composure and the Melbourne way we keep hearing about Cocksmith, it went out the window. I thought they were really, really poor in the last 20, and Penrith just found that last tackle they needed leading up to the last play and get the result. I was really impressed by how Penrith won it the hard way. And look, I'll be first to say, I thought they needed to attack a bit more to make the GF this year, and I was wrong.
Yeah, mate. Look, I think Melbourne were desperately unlucky with losing Welsh and Smith, Brandon Smith, in the first half, and I think that affected them at the back end of the game. They were quite tired. Both teams were quite tired towards the back of the game,
and the first half as well.
But look, I think this low scoring. We saw it from Penrith in the last game. They won 8-6. When
and the first week of the finals against Souths. Yeah,
it's obviously they're really leaning on their defence, and the defence was pretty good today. Pretty good. There are a few chinks in Penrith's armour. Things like kick out takes a long time to turn around. He's like the Titanic. He's not real nimble on his feet. In fact, I thought he was quite poor today, to be honest. And he
set up the match winning try.
He wasn't on his own though today. There were a few subpar players on both teams, and I guess you get that at the back end of a season, a long season, a disrupted season. But I picked Melbourne to win by 14, I think it was, or 12.
You said by plenty.
Yeah, and I was totally wrong. And I was actually wrong about the night before's game as well, because I thought it'd be tighter. So I've got a bit of egg on my face, but I'm quite happy about that today because basically everyone who listens to this podcast knows that I like Penrith. They're not my number one team, but they're probably number 2. And I thought Nathan Cleary had a really good game. He did have some errors as well, and I can see the nerves coming into high pressure games from everybody. There weren't too many players that didn't make mistakes today. It wasn't a mistake-free game, but it was tight.
No, not at all.
And it was a good. We saw how to beat Melbourne today. even without those players that were injured, I think we saw the blueprint on how to beat Melbourne. And you know,
You can't give them a
getting that
start.
first,
You can't give them a
yeah,
start.
you've got to get
it's
your own
murder.
start, and then you've
Yeah.
got to defend them into mistakes. And it's what they did, you know. So I don't know. I'm really looking forward to next week's game. But what about the night before? What did you think of Souths and Manly?
South and Manly, and I'll come back to Melbourne because I do want to analyse that element of how they're deer in headlights. I really think it was that case this game. But South and Manly to script, South forwards too good, just too good, and Damien Cook reminding everybody just how good a hooker he is. Acres of space around the play of the ball, time to choose what he wants to do. That makes Reynolds, who I thought was outstanding, even with a pop groin, evidently. Manly just, they can't. That forward pack's not that great. And I know I had a Twitter exchange, I think it was Mark Ashton beforehand. He goes, "Oh, what's this obsession people have with Manly's forward pack not being as good as South?" And I'm thinking, it's just the facts that they've got their best forward in the middle is Tapau, who for some reason started off the bench again. And I feel like he's a really good number two, a really, really, really good number two. And Paseka and Aloi and Kepi, who obviously was knocked out, good players, but they couldn't match what South did. And my nephew asked me this today, and I basically said the key decision South made, Wayne Bennett made a couple of weeks ago, Tom Burgess and JR out of the bench. It's been a masterstroke. It's been an absolute masterstroke because his starting forwards hold the opposition. And then he brings those two fellas on who just rip in, and they came all over the weaker team on the other side. It's just, I was really impressed with what South did. They ran them over in the middle and then they stretched them on the edges, and Manly and Tommy and DCE. They can't win games like that. They can't.
Well, it's the old adage, isn't it, mate? That, you know, you've got to own the middle. If you don't own the middle, there's very little chance you're going to win the game. And that's just what it is. And yeah, look, Manly were desperately unlucky last night as well with Kepi going early. You could see what Des is trying to do. He's put Kepi on to try and bring Tapau on as an impact. But when he's got to come on in the 6th minute, there's no impact from him. So they had very little strike off the bench. You know, I thought DCE made some pretty ordinary mistakes because of pressure. You know, and if you want to know. If you want to know how to make players make mistakes, it's to put them in pressure situations.
Contrast last week, DCE's space versus DCE space Friday night.
Yeah.
Chalk
Well, he didn't have a lot. I mean, I can't remember the last time DCE ran himself out of bounds, you know, over the sideline. That's pressure. Pressure does that to you. Turbo had hardly any room to move. He had a couple of moments of brilliance because he is brilliant, but in the team structure, he just didn't have anywhere to go.
Those two moments, quickly, just the obstruction was the right call. It's even Desi said it afterwards. He acknowledged, look, he took him out. And people complaining about Reynolds, he wasn't going to get Turbo. It wasn't about whether Reynolds would get Turbo. It was to pull Graham in so that Graham was then exposed by Turbo. That's the whole aim of the play. I know that there are greater minds than us who offer different opinions on the telecast, but that's what they're doing. It's what they're trained to do. And then Tommy obviously dropping the ball over the line was huge as well. But I did feel like the game was gone even somewhat before then. And Manly, look, they'll look at this season and go, we were really, really awesome, better than good, but awesome against the poor sides. And even the sides who are on the same level of us. But when it came to those big teams in the big games, they got found out by Melbourne and then they got beaten by Souths. And, you know, in a day, fourth's pretty good. Yeah.
Look, it's a pass mark for sure, and I think there were some really good things that we saw out of Manly this year. You know, you don't get to finish, you know, 4th and have a fail mark usually, unless you're one of the favourites. But I'll tell you, I really like Dylan Walker coming off the bench. The energy that he brings when he plays the hitman in the middle. You know, he's getting off his line fast. He's often trying to defend as an A defender, so that he can pressure the first receiver, and he does so. And you know, the hits that he put on were fantastic. I think they need to do a bit more of that next year. In fact, you know, Dylan Walker would be one of those players who you'd probably buy into your club as a 14 if he was going to play like that. Yeah. So, you know, I don't think it's all bad for Manly, but they do need some forwards. Josh Alloway, he's just not doing it.
He's going to miss the
and
first few weeks, I think, of next year for that tackle as well.
But let's be honest, he didn't really do the business for the Tigers much either, and they brought him in. So yeah, they've got a little bit of building to do there. But
what about South? How are you thinking about South at this stage? We're trying to rush this podcast through, everybody. That's why we're jumping a little bit.
Look, South. I thought South were good. They didn't look as striky as I thought they would be. If that's a word,
Okay.
striky.
Yeah. Potent.
They didn't look like I thought they would. But then again, they're playing really tight games now. I mean, it's I guess it's a little bit like, in reflection, we've been belting Penrith over the head for saying that they're not looking as potent, but they're playing tighter games. They're playing games against the best teams in the comp this time of the year. So you've got to give the opposition a little bit of credit. I don't know. I like the look of South when Reynolds is kicking the ball a lot. I know he couldn't because of his groin or whatever happened last night.
As it warmed up, he kicked it more. Yeah. In general play, he did.
But Cody Walker doesn't, to me anyway, isn't your first string kicker.
No.
So I guess as much as South were probably hoping for that game today to go into extra time, I think Penrith will probably be hoping that his groin doesn't recover before next week. And groins can last a while if it's
Well, Bennett and Reynolds admitted serious chance he wasn't playing last night. Serious chance.
Yeah.
It wasn't a glib comment just to create some controversy for the week. And Reynolds looked at his coach and said, you almost didn't let me play. Bold decision from Bennett to go with him. Got a great game out of Blake Tate, played really well. And Walker, I thought, wasn't outstanding, but just dangerous enough when he had to be. But to me, the game was the Cook and the forward pack show, and Manly just couldn't match it.
I think Cook played enormously last night. He showed why he's probably the game's number one hooker at the moment. Very, very dangerous. He's
compare his
smart
performance
as well.
today with Harry Grant's. Now we both love Harry Grant, but he's not at the Cook level. I'm sorry, it's not. Not yet. Not yet.
Not the Footy show. I love the smell of the finals in the morning.
In saying that, I think Coruscant was the best hooker on the field today, just especially in those last 15 minutes, the runs that he was making and his defence. No one really watches much of his defence, but he defends a lot, Coruscant. And, I think he was the best hooker on the field of the three hookers that played today.
Just quickly on Coruscant, what was impressive about him is that he looks like he's dead tired most of the time. Yet he keeps fronting up. It's if you watch him out of the line, he staggers. It's like, I'm half drunk, and then he stops big blokes twice the size of him. It's impressive.
And often when they're attacking, he'll stumble into dummy half and look like he's out of gas. But no, I don't know if that's feigning. I'm not too sure what he's doing there.
Pushing through the fatigue barrier, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. He's probably. I mean, I don't know who got man of the match last night or today, but. Who gets your man of the match for last night?
Oh, last night was Cook. I have no hesitation on going Cook with that. And then today, I'd probably come back to Cleary in the sense that he just stayed so in the game. Even when Penrith that first half, I felt like Penrith should have got more than one try. And at the end of the day, the play, which was superb. And okay, teams, one team that might do it differently, and Melbourne, another team, I guess it might. But this play came off brilliantly, a kick to the wing, all right, for Crichton to open his right and dummy half. Do they do it again in the grand final? Have they got the guts to do that? Because I hope they do.
Certainly they'll do it if that defence is compressed like the way that Melbourne were. And Melbourne often run a very compressed defence. They're not expecting him to kick at from where the position he's in over to there. But obviously it was a set play. They talked about it beforehand. They've probably been talking about it for weeks. And looking at patterns on video about what Melbourne do when they're under the pump. For mine today, I think Cleary was a very good player, and he even got buzzed in the head a little bit there.
We'll get to that in a sec, but yeah.
He got buzzed, but
he got enough hit. He got hit enough to go off the field. Let's be perfectly frank.
Yeah,
just for 2
but
seconds.
He stayed on. He stayed on. I think Yo was my best today, and
he was pretty impressive again. He's been great the whole season, let alone the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, quite often Yo is the guy that goes without really getting too many accolades. He's just a worker, very understated. Something I found interesting last night was the guy that probably shouldn't have been refereeing the game, Ashley Klein, when Kepi got clearly almost knocked out cold in front of him, he said, "Play on." I'll tell you what, I think that was a tough call on Manly. That's not what lost him the game, but I think the play needed to stop there. It was in the ruck. It was at the play the ball. Kepi's wandering around like he'd had 15 schooners.
It wasn't 10 metres behind the play like the Penrith one the week before, or 20 metres behind the play. It was right in his face. I think.
Correct. It's in the ruck.
I messaged you about it. My gut feel was that everything that had gone on during the week, Klein forgot that he actually can call timeout if a player looks like he's in danger. He doesn't have to have a touchy from 40 metres away on the sideline yell it out like he did the week before. I think it was the moment got him. Wrong decision, but I think what you saw from the week before had an influence on him just forgetting that he has the power.
And I'd also like to say to all the whinging, whining Eel supporters out there today, we saw the Melbourne orange shirt pull the game up.
This was fantastic.
For a sore shoulder.
Not just that. No, that was Smith's one, but the worst one was the Welch one. The Welch one was the worst.
Stop the game twice.
Yeah.
Stop the game twice. Welsh stayed on the field. I mean, look, we saw everything from Melbourne today. We saw them. They often, when they're under the pump, they'll pull all their tricks out, like most teams do. And fair play to them.
Yeah, the same thing. Yeah.
But we saw the orange shirt stop the game twice for non-serious injuries, and before he got to the player, exactly like the way that Penrith did it last week. Will we see him get a $25,000 fine? Hell no. Will we see him get stood down? No.
They're not playing next week, Melbourne. So
no. But will they stand him down for round one? No, they won't.
You know the answer, Cox.
I know the answer. They mate. Just something that frustrates the hell out of me. And I know that it's play that Melbourne do, but the lying on the flopping that we see from Melbourne, the third man in is always the flopper. I watched the whole game, but my son said, "What are you blowing up about that?" I said, "Let's watch the next 6 tackles." Mm-hmm. And the third man in stands there till the tackle's done, then flop on.
And he lands on his own player. He doesn't. He's smart. They don't land on the ball carrier. It's always on the guy defending. Always.
Right. And the other thing they do is they always play at the ball. Every set. They play at the ball, and what it does is it makes the referee make a decision over. He's looking at it. They wrap the ball up. They claim that they've got the ball, and then the referee has to make a decision about not how long the play the ball's happening, but who's got the ball. Oh, okay, no, Addo-Carr, let him go.
Let him go. No, he's just gone in for another grab.
And he's just taken two or 3 seconds longer to give his team a break. All those seconds add up. This is what Melbourne do. And I get a bit filthy at it because it's gamesmanship. Okay. It's professional fouling is basically what it is.
It's playing chicken with the ref. That's what it is. Yep. And it's so much easier to do when you're leading than it is when you're chasing. That's the beauty.
And we didn't see too much. We didn't see too much Jared Sutton pulling up about it today.
Well, 2 things we know. I was watching with a flatmate at different points. He was coming in and out of his office, but the key thing we saw was Jerry Sutton giving away 10 inside the 10-metre 6 agains like they were candy, and not calling a thing in the play the ball. It was one of the worst displays of picking one thing to focus on and not touching the other that I've seen from a referee. He can't be in charge of the grand final, but he will be. I want to go back to the Brandon Smith incident after we just quickly address the hilarity of Christian Welsh HIA check. All right.
Yeah.
That the very next play, Cleary kicks the ball to Crichton and they score. I love the fact that it didn't actually help Melbourne. They actually got their pants pulled down the very next play. But the Brandon Smith one, and I messaged you about it, I messaged your other friends, and you could see he goes in, it happened a couple of tackles earlier, smashed his shoulder, couldn't lift it. Then he went in and copped I think it was a boot to the head, something to the head, and he copped one to the head, but that wasn't why he was down. He couldn't make a tackle the next set. The trainer comes up and tried to start the HIA test with him, and he pushes the trainer away and says, no, it's my shoulder. All right. And the play kept going. And I messaged you and I said, wait for the HIA to get enacted by Melbourne. It's just happening. And I reckon it outsmarted Melbourne a little bit. And I'm going to tell you why, because the thing with the HIA is it gives you a free interchange. Great.
Yeah.
It also makes you have to then make a decision within 15 minutes. Can this player come back on? And I reckon what happened is, if they'd needed to bring Brandon Smith on at the end of the game with a bung shoulder, they probably could have. But because they played the HIA card, they had to make a call within 15 minutes.
Because otherwise
And
he
I
would have
reckon-
had to have come back on.
Correct. And I think that's where it may have hurt them, that he might have been able to give them 10 minutes at the end of the match. But because they played the HIA free interchange card, so there's the difference in the game. Well, losing Smith is a big factor in this game. There is no doubt about that. But I just think they outthought themselves a little bit here. If he just goes off injured, cop the interchange, maybe he comes back and makes a difference in the last 10 minutes playing with a needle or something like that. We've got to wrap because I know you've got food coming. But
That's all good.
I am extremely impressed with Penrith's ability to win this game. Again, they've scored what, 4 tries in 3 games. 1 try from the hands, which is a nice play off the scrum. Kick out, really nice pass, and he copped a hit for it. Melbourne's outside backs. I know they only considered 2 tries, but I'm just not that impressed. Munster, not a big game player in this one. He got very. He got very. I think there's a bit of a myth around that, around every game. He can lift for big games, but Origin this year, MIA. I just the try that he set up was all Pappenhausen. I lost it when he scored that try because the composure from young Pappy not to grab at that ball. How many players would have grabbed at the ball then half a second early and knocked it on? Melbourne, it's a hard loss to take because we texted each other. We said on the podcast, it felt like the only way Melbourne lose this game is if they choke, and I feel like they did. I really do.
I think they choked. Yeah.
It's not just Penrith being great, who they were, but it's Melbourne playing a certain way all year and then getting to this game, and it's just not happening for them. And I go back to that Parramatta game, and we've bleated on about this since we've come back and podcasted the last month or so. If you don't concede early against Melbourne, you force them to go from a team that plays with intensity but are controlled, we're going to play the game at our own pace intensity, to they start chasing the game. Melbourne chased the game really early in this match. Really, really early in this match.
They used a lot of petrol chasing the game.
They did,
6-point lead.
All credit to Penrith. Nathan Cleary, the best young half I've seen in a long time. And I know it's not newsflash for anybody, but he is. He's got everything. And I want to finish on this element because we will talk about all the grand final stuff the next pod we do. Obviously, Souths and Penrith, but it's the second time I've seen a blatant knock that Cleary's taken in the last 15 minutes of a game that he has not been taken off. There has not been a directive from the NRL doctor who's there to bring him off. The game hurts itself in these regards because some players go off Cocksmith for the most minor nothingness, where it almost seems like it's an interchange. What's the word? Wrought.
A regulation interchange. Yeah.
Yep. But then you see sometimes where a player will cop one, and it actually doesn't look that bad, and yet you'll see the call come off from the sideline from the NRL doctor saying he's got to come off, and then he comes off. Get this one, Cleary clearly, it's not obvious in the tackle he makes right at that point in time, but as he gets up, you can see that he's not quite right. He has the little Jimmy legs, goes back into his line. Then the trainer comes out and talks to him, and he says, no, I'm fine. And then we see nothing of it again. I am stunned there was not a follow-up. It was a very quick on the run as it happened. And I don't like the message that it sends, swiftly, because it clearly proves there is one rule for the influential players and one rule for players that aren't as good. And I'm sorry, but it exists because that was a great example. Is it the difference between Penrith making the grand final or not? The score was still 10-0 at the time. I think it was, or 10-6 at the time. They weren't behind and then they won because of Cleary. I just find this really, really infuriating because.
But here's the thing, right?
Not right.
Let's just say they go out and give him an HIA, right? And let's say the orange shirt cat from Panthers goes out goes out and gives him a HIA. Do you think if he's kind of borderline, do you reckon he's going to fail him?
No, it's the 15 minutes.
No.
It's the 15 minutes issue that I have here. Because it's
but
within
what
the
I'm
last
saying
15,
is,
they can't bring him back on.
Yeah,
If
but
he
what
goes
I'm
off-
saying is, if he goes out and gets the HIA and the orange shirt says he's passed with flying colours, he's sweet to go, they're not going to pull him off.
No, there's
You're not going to pull
usually
him off then.
if they do it that quickly, there is usually another stoppage afterwards. You've seen it. You've seen it happen 100 times. There usually is. It's
okay.
the last 15-minute factor, and it's disappointing. It didn't. I
know, but what happened? What about when Munster earlier on this year went off for an HIA and came back on 10 seconds later?
They've been doing that since. We discussed this 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it's
There's
ridiculous.
no way in the world. There is no way in the world in a grand final that an NRL doctor has got balls big enough to do that. Not going to happen.
Yep.
Not going to happen, mate.
Yep.
They won't do it in round 6. They're not going to do it in the GF.
Then you have to, as far as I'm concerned, be less either strict on the pulling players off later in the piece, which they have been. Well, they've been. It's just been players all of a sudden they're coming off, or you really crack down on these rorting HIAs, which are currently happening, because there was a case to bring Nathan Cleary off there. Yet this is where my issue is. But there was no case whatsoever to bring off Brandon Smith. Now, they showed Brandon Smith after the game, halfway towards the end of the game, sorry, and it looked like his shoulder wasn't concussed to me. I don't know about you. It looked okay.
Well, put it this way. I think if you were to ask Coach Cleary in a press conference, how's Nathan after the head knock, he'll be like, oh, no, you saw him play. He was fine. He finished the game. He didn't fall over. He wasn't knocked out cold. So I just think often when it's forwards getting a head knock, they're looking for a break anyway. Usually, if it's not in the first 15, they're looking for a break. So they'll take the free HIA. Clearly, Brandon Smith wasn't a head injury. It was a shoulder injury and couldn't finish. So, I don't know. I think that sometimes, I honestly think that a little bit like this whole pandemic sham, to my mind, I think we should let the players look after their own health. And if they're not in a position to look after their own health, then they should be taken off.
Yeah.
Simple. If the player wants to stay on, and if he's got his faculties about him, let him stay on. Like,
that's the issue here. That is the issue here. If you want to rort it one way, you can't then let Cleary stay on the field today. That's the bit that really grinds my gears.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but the good news
we should wrap it up. You got food coming.
The good news is Penrith are in a grand final, and Melbourne are gone for the year. How good? They are.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's
Wayne Bennett, 10 grand finals. Benji Marshall back after a decade and a half in the wilderness.
Amazing.
It's fantastic. Souths, Penrith, grand final next Sunday. We will reconvene. I'm not sure when, some stage earlier in the week, to do a full podcast previewing the grand final. They match up, but
let's do it when they pick the teams.
Let's Tuesday. So if we record Tuesday night, That way we'll have the Dally M's under and out of the way, and hopefully Tommy wins that. And look, there's plenty we could have talked about extra here, but Proximus got some food in the way. What have you got coming, mate? We've talked about food ad nauseum on this show lately.
Chinese, mate.
Very nice. I'm thinking a big, huge burger and a side of fries.
That'd be good too.
It could happen. Could happen. So just recapping: Penrith 10, Melbourne 6, South 36-16 over Manly. South Sydney Rabbitohs, Penrith Panthers, 2021 grand final. How good, Cocksmith?
How good would it be if it was in Sydney with no shamdemic, problems? How big would that be?
It'd be huge.
Oh, that'd be a good grand
It'd be
final.
huge. Daryl Eastlake, huge. All right, mate, take us
Huge. Pepsi.
Not the Footy show.
Wasn't it a great game for us? Absolutely, Phil. Just an outstanding game of rugby league. Reminds you of why we commentate on it, we play it, we watch it. Fabulous, a fabulous piece of entertainment. The Panthers have won, and they go to the grand final to play South Sydney. They beat the Storm 10-6.
It's people's escape, it's people's relaxation, and we need to do everything in order to continue that great tradition of...
Not the Footy show.
Birthday boy.
You been sleeping over there?
Pepsi.